No, we're not recording.
We are recording now. We are recording now.
I just can't get my kick up from here, that's all.
Okay, KUGAN CASSIUS IFL TV in association with Macklin's Gym Marbella. We're at the weigh-in here for Groves de Louisa here at Stratford Circus. With me, I've got the Daily Telegraph's very own... Right, why have you got involved in this?
No, it's fine.
Why have you got involved in this?
Can you spot the difference?
What's that meant to me?
Alright, I ain't got glasses on. Oh, I'm going then.
Who is the best sports writer out there, in your opinion?
Him. I'm not saying that because him. Trust me, him. When the camera's off, when the mic's not around, he's human. He's a grafter. Most of these guys, they'll make a story of somebody else and then write it in their own words. He's a grafter.
Really?
I'm surprised you're not divorced, man, because you're never at home.
Oh, don't say that to my wife. She's tried.
Don't leave her. Take care of him. I'm getting out of it. But him.
Where are you going?
I'm bouncing, G.
Cheers, Johnny. Lovely to see you again.
Bro.
Cheers, man. See you
A
soon.
little cameo from Nelson.
Cheers.
With me, I've got Gareth A.Davies. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, Happy New Year to you. Yeah.
Happy New Year to you too. Nearly in February now, so
I know, but it's gone quick this month.
it has. See the return of George Groves tomorrow night at the Copper Box. Obviously his first fight back since suffering a split decision defeat to Badou Jack.
Yeah, I was there that night in Vegas, yeah. I was really disappointed he didn't come and speak to us afterwards, actually, but sometimes people are so down and upset and disappointed with themselves, I think. I think that's what George was that night. We didn't get to see him afterwards. I was disappointed as a media guy about that. But, you know, I've known George a long time and it's great to see him back, in my view.
Since the first Froch fight, we've seen a lot of changes. We've seen a promotional change. We've seen two trainer changes. Has he finally got the right combination now in Shane McGuigan, the Sauerlands?
Well, it's funny that David Hayes with him and Carl Frampton's with him. They're all mavericks. They're all people that do it in their own way. They're an unusual setup, and I think that will suit George. George is saying that he feels good with Shane. I think Shane's a very modern kind of trainer, even though he's kind of steeped in boxing history. I think he's very modern. He's very sports scientific. I've been to that place in Chelsea, and they use kind of, you know, from the wild and wacky Eastern thought processes to the very modern, very organic, very scientific processes. And I think it's a good place for George. George is a thinking fighter, maybe overthinks sometimes, but I think what's difficult for George is I think he's been in such big fights so early in his career. It'll never get bigger than the night he fought Froch the second time. There'll never be a night when he is watched, you know, almost by the entire nation because it was front, centre and back. The fight in Manchester before that with Froch was enormous. It wasn't enormous in terms of crossover appeal, but it was a really big fight on a night when he nearly did this great boxer who will go into the Hall of Fame, Carl Froch. So what was difficult for George, and I was out there in the build-up obviously to that fight on the undercard of Mayweather and Berto Mayweather's retirement, was you were out there yourself. For George, it was a very tough night because he had absolutely convinced himself, and you'll remember this, he thought he had the style, the power and everything he needed to beat Badou Jack, but he was found wanting just about in every minute department in that fight, and it was a real shame for him because he kept getting caught by the overhand right and he couldn't correct it during the right hand, not the overhand, but the right hand through the fight, and he couldn't correct it. So he'll have gone away. We haven't really seen George out in the media with us guys for, you know, four months almost. But to me, having spoken to him today, I think he looks, feels and sounds rejuvenated under McGuigan, to really answer your question.
I suppose the big question that people will want to know, and it's a bit of a difficult question, but can George Groves still become world champion, and will he become world champion in your opinion?
Well, yes, he can fight for the world title, and yes, he can clearly become a world champion. I think, you know, Andre de Luisa is a guy who I think stopped in 4 or 5 rounds by Lucien Boutet, took Rebrasse, was it the distance or 10 rounds? So he's a tough competitor, but if Lucien Boutet's put him away with his power, George has the power to put him away. I just hope he's relaxed in this comeback fight. I say comeback fight, it was only 4 months ago he fought. So I just hope he's relaxed and he gets back to being excellent in the mid-range and having exchanges of attacks that he was very good at. Remember the Kenny Anderson fights where he came back in that fight when he was down. I think with George, he's a very mentally tough person, but he's also very bright and quite complicated. And I think what he needs this year is momentum and rhythm. And I can see him. Bless you. Bless you. Bless
Sorry.
you. Bless you.
Say I can see him. Go from there.
But I can see him within 2 or 3 fights fighting for a world title again. He's got a name in the sports that often counts for so much. And yeah, I do think he'll claim a version of the world title. I really want to see he and James DeGale fight again. But of course, James DeGale has a belt, and I think is probably arguably the number 1 in the division right now. I think he beats Abraham. I think he beats Badu Jack. He kind of has to go out there and prove it, because I think Andre Ward, we can safely say, is now at light heavy and isn't coming back. I'd still make him the number 1 if he can make 12 stone. But I think James DeGale's the number 1 in the division. And if George can get himself into that mindset, that's a big fight out there again. And it's the kind of fight that will get George in shape, in focus, and it's the kind of fight that could happen. But he's got to get some momentum and get a couple of wins under his belt. I think George has the potential to beat Arthur Abraham. I think he has a potential. I could see him beating Badu Jack in a rematch. It wasn't his night. You were there as well, remember? It wasn't his night, was it?
There are options for George Groves. Obviously, one of the most sensible seems to be the possible Arthur Abraham fight, with them both being with the Sauerlands. Can you see that happening?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And it's a really good fight for George if he's mentally and physically right. You know, I don't think it's the next fight. It may be. But I think I'd like to see him have one more under Shane McGuigan before going into the Arthur Abraham fight. But what he's got to go back to is his boxing against someone like Arthur Abraham. You know, look what Paul Smith did against Arthur Abraham in the first fight. He was clever, he moved, Arthur Abraham might have taken him for granted in a way in that first fight. But yeah, I think it's a really good fight for George.